Hey, YouTube world. I am your host, Proverbs Guy of the Proverbs Guy Ministries, and I'm also your friend. And I have some super exciting news for everybody out there who's going to be seeing this. And the super exciting news is that this fellow you see on the screen with the red shirt and the smile and the hand and all of that, this is one of your new hosts of your Friday night Proverbs Guy Ministries TV show called Calling All Saints. His name is Jeremiah Buckingham, and you will never forget meeting this young man. Jeremiah, hello.
Hello, Proverbs Guy, or whatever you want me to call you.
That'll work.
Today, I'm just going to go into a little bit about who I am, and we'll start the field and laying down all the groundwork for what we're about to do.
Yes.
At the end, I do plan to have other people come on. We can just talk about whatever. But let's just start with pretty much my testimony and how everything went down. Because I don't think I ever told you this, did I?
To be honest with you, no. I don't think I've ever heard your testimony. I just assumed you were some kind of gangbanger robbing Jiffy stores.
So, when I was about 5 or 6, my grandfather believed in evolution and my dad believed in creation. And I determined that not both could be right, that at least one of them had to be wrong.
Sure.
And so I started doing my own research, and that's when my dad started handing me Kent Hovind's information and tapes. And my grandfather, being an engineer and having a major in evolution, just talked to me himself about evolution. And he'd sometimes point me to other people's stuff, but he very much so was just knowledgeable on the subject. And I ended up using Kent Hovind's videos to debunk and debate my grandfather into a corner at the age of 6. To the point where, he'd be a raccoon that was cornered. He just starts getting nasty, and, like a lot of them do, even my own grandfather, because, nobody likes a 6-year-old debunking your, 7-year-old grandfather.
So wait a minute. At 6 years old, through Kent Hovind's material, you're able to debate not only a full-grown adult, but a senior citizen with a wealth of knowledge and a degree in the field.
Yes. And
wow.
Got him to admit circular reasoning, contradict himself, and everything else.
Hey!
This is going to be confusing because I was just introducing everybody to their new host in the red shirt, and now it's wait a minute, which one's Jeremiah? Which one's Ryan?
Well, this is going to be the red polo show.
The red polo. That's what you should have called it. Christ's red polo show.
Yeah, sorry. I
ended up getting home. Must have a red polo or you can't show your camera.
Oh, I like it. Hey, it's your show, bro. Your rules. Live dangerously.
Anyway, so at the age of 6, I determined there is a God. Now I got to figure out what he wants and who he is and what he wants, pretty much. And so I determined he was Jesus Christ, and I've been living for that way ever since.
How much weight is that on the shoulders of a 6-year-old? To be 6 years old and figure out, wow, God is real. What do I do with this information at 6?
I don't think I realized that this was normal, not 6-year-old content until I was 14 or so. And they're like, how old are you? I'm 6. And they're like, 13-year-olds don't think about this. And you're 13 at the moment. And I'm like, oh, interesting.
Wait, you thought you were 6 and you were really 13?
No. At the time, I was 13 talking about when I was 6. I got saved when I was 6. I learned that Jesus was real and that evolution was false. And I debated my father and debunked him at the age of 6. And so when I tell people about this story as I grew up, because it asked how I got saved, and I mentioned it to them, and they're like, 6-year-olds don't think about this. And I'm like,
yeah, they don't.
What? You're right. None of my friends at the age of 6 would ever even mention it. Right. And so I actually had to think about this. Now, wait a minute. This is unique and different.
Did you tell everyone about how prior to getting saved, you were kind of a little devil child? Did you tell them that?
No, I started with me being saved. So.
Oh, okay.
Because Ryan wants me to express it, I will.
Spoiler alert.
No.
So,
sorry.
Let me go back to the very beginning, okay? So back in the hospital when my mom had me, I'm dead serious. When she was holding me for the very first time, she says to me now that she felt great power. Either I was going to be really good or really bad. There was no in between. She's had 5 kids before me, and I'm the 5th child, and she only felt this with me, and she was like, something is different, something is powerful here. And from age 2 to 6, I was an absolute demon. I could not rest until I hurt everybody I knew. I did not have self-control. I hurt myself not because I was depressed or anything, just because it was something, to feel, and it was like exciting for some reason. When I turned 6 to 7 years old and I got saved, on that day, it all went away. And I became a completely different person. And I started living a completely radical different lifestyle. Like I went from really bad to really good.
And if I may, Jeremiah,
so
your mother isn't the only person. Yeah, sorry. Your mother wasn't the only one.
I don't know if you're breaking up or if I'm breaking up.
I was just trying to express that your mother wasn't the only one who knew that about you. Someone else knew too, and he tried to make you the bad person. But thank goodness you got saved. Thank the Lord. So that's what I was trying to...
So at the age of 7, I got saved, and I realized now I am, now I'm a Christian. I got to follow God. And as Proverbs guy mentioned, how much responsibility is on the shoulders of a 6, 7-year-old kid who now figures out that God is real. And I'll be honest, I wasn't stressed that much. I didn't really do much until I turned more 13, 14, and I started to realize the impact of my life. Because at the age of 13, I was told I wasn't going to live to be an adult. And it wasn't scary for me, but it was definitely more of a, man, I've already lived half my life. I'm going to live to be 17. I have this tumor inside of my head. Now, they said we could take care of it, and this is going to be an extensive surgery. So, I wasn't truthfully afraid of dying. But at the same time, to think my life could be over, especially if we didn't have the modern technology. It made me think about my life in a whole new light. So I went from bad to good, to good isn't good enough. And having to really figure out, what am I going to do with my life? If I lived to only be 17, what would I do with my life? And that's when I said, you know what, on top of just being, a Christian, I got to actually do what the Bible says. Bible says, go out to all nations, teaching the gospel. It, tells you how to live. And so I was like, you know what, let me actually dive into this. Let me be who I'm supposed to be. And so I like to think I had my midlife crisis at the age of 13.
You have a question from Claude. He says, what happened to you to be told that you would die so young? It sounds tragic.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that well. What?
So Claude in the audience, he wanted to know what happened to you that you almost died.
Okay, so I have this robotic ear on the side of my head. It is the kind of testament to what happened. I had a cholesteatoma. It's pretty much a cancer in the side of my head, and it was eating away at everything, being very painful, and caused me to go half-deaf, and ended up, what it was going to end up doing was growing to my brain and just sort of eating away at everything. And it would have been the slow, painful, torturous death. I may have lived to be, 21, but I wouldn't know I was alive.
Well, do we have any idea what causes tumors? Is it just the luck of the draw?
This was from birth. It was just something that was an accident when I was being created. and I shouldn't say accident, but just a malfunction in the genetic code when I was being created, and from there it just kind of developed more and more and more. And they said by the rate of progress, if we don't get it now, we can't get it. And they noticed just in time, and they rushed me into surgery that day. Like, they didn't even schedule it out. They're like, we did the scans, we diagnosed you, get in the surgery room now. And so, and they had to do several surgeries to get it out of my head and everything. And so they had to glue my ear back on. They cut the ear out of the back, flip it over, do the surgery, and then put it back, and then use glue and glue your ear back on.
Wow. So, Jeremiah, if I may, that near-death experience made you the man that you are today. I really do believe.
I do like to think so.
Yeah, because most 20-year-olds, including yours truly when he was your age, are still boys. Most of them are. And a lot of them stay boys for years after that. But you are a man because of what happened to you. I will never call you a boy.
Now I have the world's largest head from everybody like you telling me this.
I can't help it. I can't help it.
Well, now that the audience understands you're George Washington reincarnated, what are you going to do with your show, George Washington?
Well, so I've always been a fan of truth, and it's really been what my dad has instilled me in since 6. He said, seek the truth. Don't seek my belief. Don't seek anybody else's belief. Seek the truth. Here's what I know to be true. And then he handed me that information. So I would say my main goal
dad, by the way.
Yeah, you think he's an awesome character? He's practically an older version of me. We look exactly the same.
You do. You're the same height even, I think. You might be a little bit taller than him.
I'm a few inches taller.
Yeah, your dad,
but the thing is, he instilled a strong sense of nothing else matters but truth. If it's not true, throw it out the window. Don't care about it. And that's why when someone's like, oh yeah, it's this or that as far as biblical spiritual goes, I'm like, where is it in the Bible? Show me a Bible. Show me if it's in there. If it's not in there, I don't care about your opinion. Show me the evidence. And so I feel like where I want to go with my channel is I really want to stress this isn't creation science. This isn't Bible study. This isn't any one study as much as it is, where's the truth? Where can we go to find the truth towards these main questions? Once saved, always saved. Is that a biblical doctrine? Does the Trinity exist? Is that a biblical doctrine? The word Trinity is never mentioned, but we do seem to hear things of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. What about the rapture? When does it happen? Before or post-tribulation? One of my favorites is Genesis and creation science. I find it hilarious how so many people can get this one wrong. One, if you believe in the Bible clearly states that evolution didn't happen. It says in 6 days. So for those who believe in both, that's where I really get puzzled. For those who go towards more of evolution, how do you answer the first law of thermodynamics? That is a law of thermodynamics. Theories are supposed to be proven right or wrong by laws. And the law states that doesn't happen. Evolution doesn't happen. Nothing can't make something. So I do like to go into all of those topics. But yeah, it more or less would be a study of truth.
Okay, so it's going to be like a study for truth. Are you going to have guests or panels, or is it just going to be you up there and you're like, I'm Jeremiah, this is where I read it from, shut up and like it? I mean, what's your strategy?
I think, because this is my first one, I'm kind of all over the place. But what I'm thinking of doing is inviting people on, having panels, and if it ever gets out of control, I may have to limit the number of people on the panel. But then I'll also bring what I've been researching and studying to the table and say, this is what I've been hearing. This is what I've been thinking about. Where do you guys stand on this? What is your subjectiveness? As I then go to create the, I'm forgetting the name of them. I'm going to have a very professional level video that comes out every once in a while on topics, which will be my official opinion on a matter and my official acknowledgement of whatever truth is. Because like there are a lot of things where, opinions start to waver and, you start to lose sight of what you're even thinking yourself. And so I want to have a recorded document of this is truth. At least this is what I perceive to be true. And so like I will have those documentaries. That's the name of it. Documentaries. I'll have short documentaries on these subjects. And I will kind of use this as a platform to study those documentaries before making them. And so I'll be like, okay, I am working on this. I need you guys' input. And we're going to work through this and build a common theory, common understanding until we can find the truth. And I will kind of use anybody here as a research team as we move on.
Jeremiah,
Can I give you some... Go ahead, Ryan.
I know we originally talked about having a co-host for you, and we had asked Samuel to be your co-host, but he told us that he's just got too much on his plate. He can't quite fit that in. But I know of another young man who runs a ministry called Gen Z Ministries, and so if he was willing to be a co-host of yours, would that be okay? Would you like a co-host, or maybe you two could like share notes before the show and decide what you're going to talk about? So I'm just asking you, or maybe he could just be one of the people on the panel. He doesn't have to necessarily be a co-host.
Yeah, so what I plan to do with this is I would be the main host, and I'd like you here, Ryan, to just manage the accepting people in and whatnot until we do end up getting me a little bit more situated. But yeah, he could definitely come in as a panel. And then if we wanted to do something else, like a Bible study, I mean, I'm going to be here as much as I can for the other guys' channels. Yeah, so like I don't mind setting up a second show where we do Bible studies and have a co-host. And I understand that's what we were talking about with the Samuel Spoonhour guy, is starting up some kind of Bible study on a different day. But that's not what this is. This is studying science in the Bible.
Okay, well, I will.
Saints is this show that we're on now.
I will help out.
Sorry, what?
Sorry.
So you said studying science and the Bible. That's what this show, that's what you're going to gear it towards?
Yeah, it's going to be studying science and the Bible. Bible, not always with science, because there are certain things that are theological about the Bible. I guess it'd be like historical science, and the Bible.
Okay. Dude, I like it.
Proving what you can know without a shadow of a doubt to be true.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and you're a protege of Dr. Kent Hovind, so I have full faith in you.
I've been studying his content since I was about 5 to 6 years old.
Wow. Sadly, I only learned of him back in around 2020. I just stumbled across him on YouTube, like I have so many other people, like Eli Yoder and Samuel Spoonhour. I just stumbled across him on YouTube.
You didn't know about Kent Hovind until 2020?
I didn't. I really didn't. But you see, prior to 2020, I was still very much in the world, and that was only the very beginning of God sanctifying me, 2019, 2020. And I only really started having an interest in watching Christian YouTubers around that time. Before that, if I watched YouTube, I'd look at a car review or something like that, something trivial. But I stumbled across Kent Hovind because I started being interested in creation science. It's like I had been interested in the past. I just kind of didn't really care much about it. And I was starting to develop an interest in it again when I stumbled across him. Yeah, so yeah, it was around 2020 when I discovered him.
Let's do this.
Yeah, I think you missed the best years. His, in my opinion, my favorite content of him, and when I think he was really on fire, was back in the VHS days when he made his first seminar.
Now I have watched,
compiled 7 videos, and you can still find them on.
I have watched the Creation Seminar series on YouTube because he had it. I don't know if he still does, but at one time he had it all on YouTube, and I did watch either all.
It's out there somewhere. There are a bunch of people There are a bunch
Yeah,
of
look,
people reposting it and making sure that it stays alive.
yeah, it's got to stay online. It is some very genius material, and I think um, I think he filmed it probably in the '90s, just judging by how he looks like he's about the same age I am now in the video. So maybe it's 15 or 20 years ago, something like that. I guess is when he made it. I don't know. Do you know the years that he made that?
I do not remember what year he made it out.
I think he made the seminars in 2007.
Oh, okay, 2007.
I want to say 2007. They
Which would be about 15 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it might even be like 2004. I remember a lot of the homeschooling communities in Central Florida use some of his seminars for their teaching.
It's really good stuff. And yeah, he looks like he's about my age in that video. So that would make sense. It'd be right around 2007.
You know what? Or did he get arrested in 2007? So I think it was closer to 2001 to 2004.
I mean, he kept making new iterations of it all the way up to being arrested. He'd make a better version and then put that one out.
I think he would have been arrested in
2007.
He was in prison for 9 years.
From Adam to me. He just kept making more until he got it perfect. That was perfect.
He was released in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Thanks for not validating that, Ryan. I will remember that, sir.
You're welcome.
You are off my Christmas card list.
Oh, all right.
All right, so Jeremiah, how long do you want to run this?
I'm gonna
go ahead.
Today I think I'm just gonna do a shorter one, maybe an hour, maybe more or less. We'll see where it flows. How many people join? Right now, I'm gonna kind of let it be an open mic, and I'm gonna start kind of discussing the next video plan, because that's kind of what I plan to use this for. That and debates. So,
all right. So
we'll see where it goes.
There are 7 people watching this, and Jeremiah here is the newest host of our Friday night shows called Calling All Saints. So you guys be really supportive, and Claude, Bubble, how about you guys come in and help him sharpen up a little bit, because you guys are some of the nicer counter opinions to our theology, because you're not both atheists. One of you is a polytheist. But you guys come on in and meet the new host. That is the breaking news, Skylar.
Yeah, come on in the room, guys.
I don't understand why Jeremiah is muted. You know you're the host, right?
I had some feedback going on or something. I just wanted you to say what you wanted to say. So, is my internet coming in okay? Because I see Ryan breaking up every once in a while. I wonder if that's me or him.
Do you see me breaking up?
You guys both look fine on my side.
Okay.
I have noticed there's a bit of a volume delay between the 3 of us.
So how do I look to you, Jeremiah? Am I breaking up?
You're glitching pretty bad on my screen. Maybe it's part of the receiving or something, because sometimes when the information's coming in or something, it's getting scrambled. Anyway, I can work with it. As long as I'm coming out clear, then I guess I don't have to mute myself.
Maybe you can upgrade your video.
I'm sorry, what?
Your internet. Maybe you can upgrade your internet or something. Because I think my brother upgraded his internet.
It's an idea, or I could switch rooms eventually. Well, I'll figure out where I think I get the best connection.
Yeah, this is still
right now. It's not bad.
And me, I used to use my phone, and now I use my PC, and I prefer the PC because that way I can still use the phone for other purposes. Like if I need to Google something real quick, or if I get a quick phone call, it doesn't interrupt the session. So
I got other devices as well.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm looking at recently. So to those who have seen my channel, which is called Calling All Saints for you guys, it has a video on there that I made called Is There a God? Like, is God real? And that video discusses how, from a scientific point, from not starting with the idea that there is a God, looking to see how the universe came into play, and consequently proving there is a God, because to make it super simple and short, we know the origin story of this. We know that the origin story was a designer. Anything we know the origin story of, we know there's a designer. So you take the origin story of something we don't know about, and that in itself, through simple logic, would show that you'd have to have a designer. That would be science.
Just real quick.
So my whole thing.
Praise the Lord, Scott. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat while you're talking, and I really liked what Scott had to say.
Okay. So as I was saying, I got derailed just a little. The next video that I was working on, it's mainly because I had a friend who started struggling with this. What, Ryan?
I said I apologize for throwing you off track. I didn't
Ryan,
mean to.
you have got to stop.
I just got on track, and then you threw me off apologizing for throwing me off track.
Well,
he's on an audio.
No, I'm good.
Was very notable.
He's on an audio delay with us also, Ryan. So it's already like stop and go.
I'm sorry, Jeremiah. I'll keep my mouth shut. You talk.
Yeah, like everything gets delayed, everything's glitchy, so like the moment you say something, I have to stop and figure out what it is, which is great for conversation. I mean, we gotta have some of that, but like trying to get my point across. So using that simple logic, we can prove God's existence just by understanding that the things we know the origin story of, we know that they take an intelligent designer. The things that are equally complicated, if not vastly more complicated, that we don't know the origin story of, that can be proven that there's a complicated designer by just using common sense and logic. If you move forward, the next question that I had, and the thing that my friend is truthfully struggling with, which is why I'd like to answer it for him, is who is God? Now, obviously, I believe in Jesus, and I mean, that's my personal belief. But the thing is, scientifically speaking, how do we know that God's word is the proven word of God? And how do we go from a person just believing that God exists to a specific God that you can name? And so that's my thing, is I like to take them, even though I am a Christian, I like to take them as far back approach as possible, a less Christian approach and more of a science approach, and say, well, let me test this, let me challenge this. And so currently I don't have that video out, and I've been struggling with this one as it is, trying to figure out, from someone who just believes there is God, but they don't know the name of God, they don't know the nature of God, and they're trying to figure that out. How on earth, where would you start that process?
Well, Dustin Buck has joined us, and he is a very famous YouTube atheist. So I think he came in here to ruffle your feathers. And Dustin, Jeremiah here is our new Friday night host of his own show. So if you could give him a run for the money with all the atheism and evolution that you believe in, that would really help us out.
Right, crikey then. Let's put a shrimp on the barbie. So anyway, it's a very clear distinction in today's world when we look at nature and we see the long processes as they break out along the tundra. At any particular point, we can pull up a fossil specimen and see where they are in their level of development and look at the layer below and above it and compare. And we see a progressive state. How do you argue with such evidence, man?
Yeah, sure. When my dad dies, we gotta lay him perfectly down on my grandfather, and when I die, I gotta lay down perfectly on top of my dad. So we'll have to go and that is, I like what Kenthoven said the best.
The top layer.
When
would
you
be
see
younger.
bones in the ground, all you know is it died. And then that's the truth of it. I mean, we like to make all these assumptions and these educated guesses that go directly against science, when truthfully, it's just that. You have bones in the dirt. That means something died. It does not mean that it progressed. The only way I could see something actually working out towards an evolutionary favor in a fossil record is if there was some weird habit where the grandkid always died on top of the grandfather. But again, how would you know that was actually the grandkid? So you can't do a DNA test on that. It's just bones.
Crikey, mate. It's like you didn't hear a word I was saying. Again, we look at the model and we look at nature and we compare. And then we look at your Bible and we see no comparison. Where's your basis for saying one hypothesis is more likely than the other? I can tell you where my basis is. It's called the geologic column. That one thing that guy on the TV keeps yelling about. Yeah. Anyway, my point is a crocodile clearly came from a lizard. Just look at it, man. Just look at it. Crikey.
Oh man, I've never
I
heard
did
that
not
accent
know-
come out of you. That is hilarious.
I didn't know you had this in you, Dustin.
I'm thoroughly impressed. I'm blown away, really. I couldn't tell where Dustin started and Mark Reed ended.
Oh, now hold on there, Mike. Hold on there, Mike. You can't compare the two clearly because we're not looking at a top-down progression. We're looking from a bottom-up. So the basis for the two individuals are completely different. So says the genes that has no ancestry.
To refute that argument, though, how can I make a basis off of sort of what has happened from my personal theory? The way you look at a theory is first you see what it says. For example, in the text, it says that there was a worldwide flood. This is probably the easiest one to prove. And if you say, well, there's a worldwide flood, you'd have to look for the evidence of that. And what is the evidence? Billions of dead things laid down by water all over the earth. So then you can just look anywhere and find billions of dead things laid down by water all over the earth. That's what sedimentary rock is. Sandstone is a sedimentary rock. So when we see sandstone, you know that was laid down by water. You see sandstone everywhere. So there must have been water everywhere. You see things encapsulated in sandstone, which means it was encapsulated back when there was water over the earth.
But the flood was local.
But the flood was never brought up, crikey, in the Japanese culture there.
Actually, I think they did.
Yeah, I was about to say, now hold up. It's practically mentioned in every culture.
Okay, well, who would know, you or Dustin, who's obviously from there?
Crikey, mate, we're neighbors. It's just a hop, skip, and a spit away, my friend.
Wait, aren't you an island? Like in the ocean?
Yeah, Japan's not that far away.
That's what the skip is.
Is it like Florida, far away from like Texas? Is it like that far away?
I don't know. I'm not really a geologist, man. I'm just being funny.
Texas and Florida doesn't seem that far
That was
away
good, Dustin.
until you drive nonstop from San Antonio to Orlando. And then
Ooh.
it seems forever.
Yeah.
All right, I'm one of those.
pain I've already been put through today.
All right, I'm one of those filthy atheists. I'm gonna be like, don't you believe in evolution? What do you do about the fossil record? Are you getting where's the rabbit in the Cambrian?
You and I don't get that they still point.
That's a good
at the fossil
question.
record. They still point at the fossil record, which is the funniest thing because there is no fossil record. They have a bunch of bones. The geologic column doesn't exist. Think of it like a deck of cards, right? If the deck of cards is over here in this order and it's shuffled over here in this order, they just pick and choose and then made a textbook version of it that doesn't exist anywhere on the planet.
But are you denying the mosaic gradualism of species gradually changing over time and the arrival of new species? I'm trying to sound like an atheist.
You're doing a good job, Darth.
How do you prove the arrival of a new species? You'd have to prove that it didn't exist.
But evolution fit that.
They don't call it an arrival, they call it a discovery.
Yeah, discovery.
I mean, that's fair. You can discover a new species, but like, how do you know it wasn't here from like the beginning of all time versus, you know, like wherever it did come into play? Because like, sure, we have new types of squirrels, okay? Which I know is not a new species, but we have new types of squirrels, and they'll be like, oh, we discovered a new one. Unless you genetically bred it right there, and you watched its birth and everything, how do you know when you have a new species? You just have to discover them, as you said.
Okay. So you accept microevolution, correct? And that's just gradual change of an animal. So what limits this gradual microevolution? What's limiting microevolution to finally change that squirrel into like a dino squirrel?
Well, one, physics. Two, common sense. Just to get into a few, a lot of things are wired completely different in one over the other. For example, if you could imagine the bloodstreams, airways, all these things to be like different piping.
Yes,
you get the two pipes that move around each other, and at one point they have to appear on the other side. And that'd be catastrophic if it happened all at once. But the thing is, if it doesn't happen all at once, it doesn't happen.
Yes, but even evolutionists will say that physics is a limitation, a limiter on evolution. So no evolution is going to say evolution defies physics.
Well, that's the point, though, is physics is a limitation or a limiter on evolution. And so you can evolve to a point. A dog will always be a dog because the moment it ever tries to become anything less than a dog, it bumps into physics.
Yeah, but...
And so physics is the limiter force of changing from one species to another. It can't happen. The gap is too wide to jump.
Too wide, but that's not a physics thing. That's a mutation thing. So are you saying that mutations defy physics?
No, it's that mutations can happen to a certain point till they are physically not useful anymore. So
but what determines what is not useful?
When the animal dies. I mean, come on, this is what an evolutionist would say anyways. An animal dies, it's not a useful mutation. And
but
so
we're here, so there clearly was useful mutations, right?
Crikey,
some
mate.
are just not as harmful as others.
Have you never heard of sickle cell? Crikey. We see examples of beneficial mutations all the time.
Exactly.
Like the collapsing of a vein whenever a drug addict takes it too far, man.
Are you denying beneficial mutations? Mutations do exist, right?
You two are just really funny.
Crikey. If I have a problem with my kidney and I take it out with my butcher knife, is that not an example of evolution, considering I did it myself?
If we're here, it's clear evolution is true. Are you denying we're here there, Jeremiah?
You guys...
I
think you're denying science. You're not with the science. Get with the reality, Jeremiah.
God, bro, what is up?
God does not exist.
What has happened?
I'm trying to sound like
I don't. Yeah, he went and changed ginger on us. He's a ginger.
Yeah, they're all
You guys-
transgender.
You guys are on a roll tonight.
In all seriousness, I don't think we have an atheist in the room, to be honest.
I am an atheist. Does God exist there, Jeremiah? Yes or no?
Yes, I actually went into a detailed video proving God exists.
Oh, well, show me God. I don't see him anywhere.
On a more serious note, that reminds me of a.
I guess he doesn't exist there, Jeremiah. Checkmate.
Hi, faithful.
It reminds me of a verse. Okay, this and I was talking to my friend about this. It talks about how the atheists and, well, it doesn't say atheist. It says the ones that are the tangible world, the physical world, can't understand the things of the spiritual world. And so what ends up happening is you get these two schools of thought, one that can understand and one that can't understand the spiritual world. And the ones that can't laugh at the ones who do because it looks like foolishness. And the Bible has several verses to talk about it, but pretty much it says like the matters of the spirit realm look like foolishness to that of the carnal.
So you're saying it doesn't exist right there, Jeremiah?
I'm saying to that
Who is
of
this
someone who does not believe in
That's
a
right.
God and cannot understand the spiritual realm, to them, a spiritual realm looks like foolishness. And I can give a perfect example. If we look at the question of aliens, do aliens exist? A Christian who studied the Bible can say, well, aliens are most likely demons who masquerade as aliens. But if you talk to an atheist about the same question, they'll say, well, to believe it's anything other than an alien would be idiotic and stupid. That would be foolishness. But we look at them from a spiritual side and we say, well, to believe in an alien could potentially be foolishness.
But aliens don't exist, Jeremiah, just like your God.
Jeremiah, if I may, you see, an atheist would believe in aliens because, according to their theory of evolution, if life evolved here, it's also evolved all over the universe.
Actually, no. Here's what an atheist. Here's what I heard an atheist say. You say they cannot believe in aliens because then they will have to say, well, there's apparently green monkeys out there. And they can't say that.
Okay.
They all
Right,
say
I've heard
something
of-
different. That's the problem with I'd say evolution and atheism is that they all kind of pick and choose what they want to believe. I'm dealing with a lot of people at the current moment who have turned their own intellect into their own God. And at a certain point, like, they just, you prove them wrong in something and they move to the next.
Have you tried them hit it with a TAG argument?
THG. What's that?
The transcendental argument from God.
I don't think I've heard of that one, at least not by name.
It's basically claims like all statements of knowledge are going to need a foundation. So, for example, if you're going to say, I'm being rational or I'm being logical, that logical rationality needs to bounce off something. That needs to bounce off the reality, that which truly is true. So that's going to need a presupposition. So when you're saying I'm being logical, what are you presupposing? Well, you're presupposing order. And order only comes from a mind. Randomness doesn't get you order. Only mind gets you order. So then if a mind is fundamental, that's what we're saying. God is fundamental. Mind is fundamental.
I've used similar arguments. I don't know if I used the name. You said like THG. I don't think I've used that name for it, but I've used an argument based off of pretty much, if you have truth, what is that truth based off of? Is that truth repeatable? Is it testable? Can you do science on it? Or is it going to slip the moment I prove it wrong? Is it just going to slip into something else and have a rubber ruler?
Actually, they do. They just won't tell you. Atheists actually believe in something called uniformity. Now, with randomness, you can quote unquote get uniformity. For example, let's say there's a bunch of rectangular shaped blocks of wood, and then I shake the table, and they all randomly fall. They all uniformly falling down,
Mhm.
but none of them. If I shake the table randomly and all these little pieces of wood fall, they're not gonna arrange themselves into a tower. Only a mind can get you to a tower from those little blocks of wood. Somebody needs to come and arrange them. So what these atheists are saying, well, you can get uniformity through randomness. That is, shaking the table, they all fall down. Sure, they're uniform, but they are not ordered.
True. Yeah.
So
They all share the common thing that they're done and they're destroyed and they're on the ground. That there's no complex creation there.
Yeah, there's no order
truth
there.
truth is a series of so okay, there's three kinds of lies, right? But there's only one kind of truth. But there are a series of methods to get to the truth. So ultimately, what you're dealing with is a multi-component facet that when you're trying to get to ultimate truth, you have a lot of different variables. And the best way to deal with those variables is kind of the same way you deal with relativity. You try to reduce all those variables down to the number of one, so that a higher number is just simply on, like an on-off switch for a transistor. You just make them digital instead of variation.
Hey, can I jump in real quick? Claude Balls, that was funny. That is a funny comment. So
Hello. I just read that.
Random topic, thinking about unicorns for a second. Anybody have a theory on what unicorns are?
I don't.
A
And I
sea
wouldn't offer a
creature that
theory.
somebody.
they're rhinoceroses
Can,
or
can, I,
narwhals.
can I speak a little bit on what Dustin was saying about truth? For example,
Sure, go ahead.
so when somebody asks you what truth is, do you think truth is objective?
I think people's
No, there's only
understanding. I think
there's
people's
there's only there's only one truth.
And that would be God, right?
So then it's
Well,
objective.
that would now you're getting into first person perspective, right? Truth doesn't require perspective.
I say yes. So I think truth is contextual because, for example, I would say you can only be closer to the truth, and that truth would be God. So, for example, me saying this apple is red, that truth is only contextual, which still represents God, which is the truth.
The second you take first perspective into an account, right, then you also have to open the door for a second perspective. So you might see the apple is red, but what if I was colorblind? How would you explain that to me?
And that's where I have to say there is this caveat with truth. And that is one of the biggest problems, and I've kind of mentioned it, is my opinion of truth. Because there is one truth, we would agree with that. There's one constant. But the thing is, everybody looks at truth through their own lens. Someone might be colorblind. Someone might have this weird problem where they're not able to see normal colors like everybody else. And this can go with anything. Oftentimes, it's how you look at the world. If you look at it through an evolutionary mindset, for example, you're not going to see God because you didn't search for God. If you look at it from purely a Christian mindset, you're looking at it from a God-created universe, you're going to have a harder time seeing what the evolutionist is trying to say.
So
there is ultimate truth, though, okay?
Yes.
There is a truth that can be agreed upon by two people that have impairment of senses. Like you and I can agree that a triangle has 4 90-degree corners. We don't have to agree on any of the other parameters in order to know what it is that you and I are talking about.
Did you say 4 90-degree corners?
I think he meant to say square.
Okay.
Yeah, square. My bad.
4 90-degree corners. I'm like, now hold on.
I meant square. That was a
truth,
slip of the
damn it.
tongue.
Oh, my bad, curse.
I know with the whole wokeism, there's this thing called your truth, but we don't talk about that here.
Yeah. So like,
I
yeah,
slipped. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to say that.
yeah. But they're talking about subjective truth. For example, there's objective truth, subjective truth, and contextual truth. So I take the position of contextual truth. So even if there's a person who is colorblind, well, it's still true, but contextually, to him it might be black, but that's relying on the context that he's colorblind.
Well, no. But what I'm telling you is at that point, the truth is rendered completely moot. The color could have been blue or orange for all he knew, right? And it wouldn't have made any difference for him to see the color of the apple. So like if you're involving your first person context and perspective, then you have to leave the door open for a second person perspective, because like I said, there's always that sense that allows for a difference of opinion.
Yeah, but
I mean,
ultimately we would still arrive at the same capital T truth.
No, you couldn't convince me if I really didn't want you to that the apple was red. If I decided to be obstinate, you and I would never agree on that because I didn't want to,
and that's
right?
why I
Because
say
you didn't.
there is a perspective of truth, which is kind of what you're talking about, the contextual truth, which is this is what I see and this is what I interpret, and then there's actual truth, which doesn't care about your contextual truth, as some would say. For example, I was raised in a culture where a lot of people were friendly. So when I look out in the world, I'm going to pull from my personal experiences. I'm going to say, you know what? Most people in the world are friendly, honest people. Sure, you may not want to trust them with $1 million just handing it to them, but in general, if you say, "Here, hold my phone for a second, I'm going to tie my shoes," 90% of people aren't going to run away with it. That'd be my take on it. That would be what I understand to be true. That would be my perspective of truth.
Try that
Now,
in
is
Seattle
there?
and then tell me what you think.
Well, yeah. So, like, now here's the thing, though. As Dustin has stated, and my wife shares a very polar opposite view. My wife, particularly, comes from a very different background. She is like, everybody's going to use you. Everybody's going to try and hurt you. You can't trust anybody for anything. That is how she looks on the world. And that is her perspective of the truth. I am sure the truth falls somewhere in between. But the thing is, it's not her perspective. It's not my perspective. What I've known to be true is just an average of everything I've seen. And if I go to Knoxville, Tennessee, which is where I'm from, and I hand someone my phone and say, "Here, hold on to that for a second while I tie my shoe," I would bet you that I'm not going to lose my phone if I do it once. Now, if I do it 100 times, I might find somebody. But if I do it once, the chances of me having my phone stolen are not that high. And that's why if you go to a park, someone will hand you their phone and say, "Take a picture of us, please." In certain areas are very different than other areas. And if you combine everything together, you end up getting the truth. But our perception of the truth is what we're stuck with. I will never see past my own perception of the truth, which sucks. And I'll admit that straight out the gate. I can only see what my eyes can see. If I'm colorblind, I can only ever see my perception of the truth. I can acknowledge yours, and I can say, well, 90% of people say I'm wrong and say that they can see more than me, but I can only ever see what my eyes are capable of seeing. If that makes sense.
If I may, Jeremiah, only in recent months has Luria actually opened up to me and let down her walls to me. And I found it to be quite an honor that she did that.
Well, I'm not going to mention my wife too much. She doesn't necessarily like being on the camera and display and have her name plastered everywhere. So I'll leave it as that. I was just using it as a general example.
I won't say anything else then. Seems like
I encourage her to come over here, but she doesn't. So.
Oh, she didn't want to come over? Okay.
But the whole point of the truth argument that you in the beginning we were making is like it all falls back to like God. So it's all truth, even if like in any world possible. The mere fact that you're like making any logical claims of truth or knowledge would still will require that fundamental mind of God.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be some kind of constant.
Yeah, so like that truth needs to bounce off something. Like this being true, well, that's only true because X is true.
Yeah. So like I would say like, and it starts to get into a slippery slope because then you get the people who go like mentally insane and they start to pretend things are true that aren't. And so I will go down like that route just a little and be like, I'm not talking about the whole your truth, my truth thing. I'm just saying we have perspectives and we have biases. Everything we ever say should be reflected off of the absolute truth. But the thing is, we're humans and we have a hard time bouncing things off of absolute truth.
But that's the thing. Atheists don't. That's why atheists will go down the road of being quote unquote agnostic, because then they have to justify their knowledge claims. So they don't want to justify that they have knowledge claims because they have nothing to bounce it off. What are they going to
Yeah.
bounce it off? A banana, a monkey? Got nothing.
And,
Wait, what?
Like atheists will usually claim to be agnostic because their claims to truth have nothing. They have no foundation, so they'll just pretend to be agnostic.
So the people I bump into who claim to be a full-on agnostic, like there might be a God, there might not be a God. They are just the true agnostic. I deal with them in one of two ways. One, I bring them the truth, and I'm a lot like a sledgehammer. If you could imagine people to be like different types of tools, I'm like a sledgehammer. If somebody tells me something is wrong, I'm going to tell you, well, that's wrong, and move on. And so what I'll do with agnostics, and they personally work really well with the sledgehammer mentality. I give them the truth the way the truth is. And I'll point out what they know and what they don't know. Because in all of us is a knowledge. It's kind of the reason why Jesus asked questions instead of gave answers. They would ask him a question and he would answer with a question. Because they already knew the answer. They just didn't want to know the answer. They wanted to hear what he had to say instead of what they already knew to be true. And so I'll let them know what they know to be true. And that normally kills the agnosticism to a certain point. And at a certain point, if they don't end up even listening to that, if they don't listen to what they already know to be true, I kind of just leave them be because at that point, they're pretending not to know.
Yeah,
They know. They're choosing to pretend not to know. They're not even choosing not to know. They're choosing to pretend not to know.
yeah. You get a bunch of dishonest atheists because they're cornered.
I'm not even talking about the atheists. I'm talking about the people who just say they don't know.
They're just atheists without an argument.
More or less. More or less. Some of them will say, oh, it's very likely there's a God. I just
Yeah.
don't know who he is.
Probably.
Yeah. But that's the thing is they get so slippery. And the thing is, it's hard to debate someone who's slippery. If they are fully against you, well, then there you go. You can, really bash into them and have a good debate and really show where your conflicts are. But when you get somebody who doesn't believe something, those, in my opinion, are the least favorite discussions I've ever had. Those, in my opinion, are the ones where you just can't figure anything out with them. And it's kind of like wasting time is when they don't believe anything, but they don't want to believe anything.
Well, you can't even be an agnostic. That's just not possible. Because if we're dealing with like the very foundation of reality, it's either God or not God. So you can't be agnostic towards that.
Yeah. Well, they'll even say, well, how do you know we're here? How do you know this isn't the Matrix? How do you know we're not just a brain in a jar? Like, how do I know I'm not just a thought floating around?
There is something to that argument though, because most of the space that we're most of the matter that we deal with on this level is full of empty space. It's a question of how much of what's there is actually there. Like 90% of the space or the matter that you find in any given material is all in the nucleus of the atom. And the rest is just empty space.
This pen is like 99.9% hollow. Like I totally
empty
get
space.
That. It's empty space between the atoms. I shouldn't even say hollow.
Jeremiah, may I make an observation?
Sure.
I have known people over the years. In fact, I used to work with a guy who's now retired. That I heard a preacher once say that they live a dog's life. In other words, they don't want to know the truth. They don't care to know. They just want to do what feels good They just want to be happy and comfortable. They just simply want, and if they talk about God, it's going to make them uncomfortable. So they just simply they don't want to think about him. They just want to live their comfortable little dog's life. You
I
know,
hate
dogs
those
don't.
people.
Yeah,
Well,
there are
wasn't it
people
like
like that.
Richard Dawkins? And I could be wrong with the person, but I know there's a famous atheist out there who said the reason why we don't believe in God is because it would go against our sexual mores. Pretty much, I want to be able to have sex. I want to be able to have fun, do drugs,
Yeah.
murder, steal, whatever. And I don't
Yeah.
want to be accountable for it. So I'm going to pretend God doesn't exist.
Yeah,
But the-
I just want to do what feels good. I want to do what I want to do. That's like I just want to be a dog.
I mean, this is why most of them were socialists and hate capitalism, because capitalism it's not friendly to this hedonistic kind of world.
Yeah,
It forces you
plus,
to do.
sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
I was just gonna say,
Socialism, if you don't worship the true God, you'll find another God. And socialism and communism make government God.
Yeah, they
I
make
worship.
man God.
They make man God. Yes, that's right. That's right.
no, they make
Yeah.
the state. They make the state God, and they're
Well,
pretending.
the state's ran by a man.
What's the
So-
difference?
Ah, you're right. You're right. What is the difference? Correct.
They make
Jeremiah, may I ask you
some
a
man
question?
God.
Anybody except the right wing.
Faithful has a question for you, Jeremiah.
You've
Faithful has a million questions.
which one do you want first? Hi, Jeremiah. You mentioned that people don't believe in God, and y'all have said so much since you made this statement. I'm trying to get it right to refresh me. You said that people don't believe in God because they don't want to believe in Him, or something to that effect. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, they choose not to because it doesn't align with what they want. And so they say, well, I'm not going to believe in God because I want to do X, Y, Z.
Okay, thank you. Then my question is this: have you ever, how old are you?
I'm 20.
Okay, how have you ever in your 20 years of life ever met someone that actually did not believe that there was a God?
Well, I've met
Not somebody, wait a minute, not somebody that was an atheist, not somebody that was agnostic, not somebody with all of the uh, adjectives, criteria, and titles and names and everything that all you that not just you young people, but that everybody likes to give, because now you're talking to somebody that's about 8 decades, and I won't tell which side of that I am. And in 20 years, and this is directed directly to Jeremiah, have you ever run across somebody that did not know that there was a God?
I mean, as you said, there's a lot of people who claim they
No,
don't
no,
think
no.
there's a God, but I would
Please,
definitely
please.
say,
No, that was not the question. And
yeah,
please don't, please,
in my opinion,
all
I
right,
don't think I've ran into
that's
someone.
better.
In my opinion, I don't think I've ran into someone who I would say truly thinks there's no God. I
Okay,
would say
no,
they suppress the idea of.
the question was, have you ever run across somebody that did not believe that there was a God? They had no idea, because they have, if there's a God out there somewhere, why whatever. Have you ever run across anybody that did not know that? And let me expand that. Have you ever run across anybody that never heard about Jesus?
I'm a little confused on your first question. Everybody I've
Okay.
talked to knows about Jesus, but I live in America, so.
Okay. Well, I live in America. I have for 8 decades, roughly. Now, so I'm asking the question, and I don't want an answer, because I do know that I know my answer for that. I'm asking you in 20 years, and this is not challenging. You can ask Ryan. I don't challenge people to set them up or anything like that. Is that true, Ryan?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm genuinely asking you these questions because I care about you, and I care about what you want to do with this program. And that's why I'm asking you these questions.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to tell you in my 50 plus years of my journey into Christ, and I'm going to phrase it that way because we're all on a journey. We start off with Him drawing us, and it continues until the day He calls us out of here. And are we in agreement with that?
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. So you see, I'm not trying to be argumentative or anything. I really want to see you succeed. And you can ask Ryan, when you were on his program originally, I told him, I said, I'm just kind of quite impressed with this young man. And not that I'm anybody to impress or anything, but you came across as somebody that was very knowledgeable, someone that could pretty much hold your own in anything. And for somebody that's 20 years old, I think that's really commendable. So my question was, have you personally ever run across anybody, not in your opinion, but that has said to you, I don't know whether there is or not? And they were
That I've
genuine
run
about
into
it.
those people who say that they just don't know.
Okay, so you have run into them, but then then you have somehow made the discernment or come to the conclusion that they really didn't mean that based on what? And I'm not trying to give you a hard time, and we can do this privately if you'd rather. But
No, so
if
I
you're going
like
to have
challengement.
if you're going to have something like this, I know you'd like to be challenged, and I like to challenge people to think about some things, and I don't,
Yeah,
and I never do it meanly.
Yeah, don't worry. I would consider myself very hard to offend. I like the challengement. Even if you were trying to be argumentative, that's completely fine. As long as we do it in an orderly fashion, which you are. So the thing that I see that mainly gets them to admit that they believe in a God. Just let me use an example from someone I literally talked to who started with, I don't know if there is a God. I think there might be one. I don't know. It's possible. I started talking about who Jesus was with them. And at the end of the conversation, they either go one of two routes. They go, why would God die for my sins? Why does he care about me so much? They quit talking about him as a fake person, and they start talking about him as someone they know to be true. And then the other route
Hey guys, I gotta drop out. I'll be back.
Agree with God.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what?
All right.
The reason why they say I don't agree with God is because he took a family member, for example. Those are the two most famous ones I've heard.
I see.
Notice they move away from.
Sure.
Yeah, they move away from the science. I mean, I've even had atheists admit these things. I've had a ton of atheists who say God doesn't exist, go to the reason why I don't like God is, and then state why they don't like someone who supposedly doesn't exist. What I would also say is the Bible even talks about itself, that every man has hidden in him the knowledge of God. It is ingrained into us as a being.
If it's hidden in him, and I don't mean to interrupt you, if it's hidden in him, then that's not a conscious thing. And if somebody says, I don't know that there is a God, I don't know that there is one, that one exists, is it
I don't think it's always a conscious decision. I don't think it's always a conscious decision. Sometimes it's something that they suppress so much that they've truly lied to themselves. I mean, I've lied to myself before. I've said something so many times that it ends up becoming true for me. And truthfully, it's not true. I lied to myself. I ended up getting myself convinced in something that wasn't true. And I think all of us have been able to do that. I mean, even Hitler said, if you tell a lie loud enough and long enough, you'll believe it. People will believe it. So when it comes down to this, I will get themselves. Yeah, if you let me finish. And you said you didn't mean to interrupt, so I'm going to hope in good faith that you didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go right ahead.
If the main thing is that they themselves will start to talk about God as a real person, and they'll say why they're mad at him or why they have problems with him, but they'll kind of admit in their own way that he is real. They'll start to talk about him like a real person, and they'll say, this is why I don't like him. How can you not like someone who isn't real? And then the other thing is the Bible preaches on it and says that they know. It may be suppressed, but they know. And comparing these two together, every time I've gone to somebody after talking to them and been like, now I've proven you wrong in several points, and I understand we could keep going with a million more, but you know God exists. Why do you deny him? They never say, well, hold up, I don't know. They've always said, well, I don't like him because. And they'll admit in that moment, no, I know he's real, but I still reject from him. Anyway, that's all I had to say on it.
So this is after you've had a conversation with them, then you get them to say that.
Yes, after I've had a conversation.
Okay.
I'm sure if I walked up to Richard Dawkins and I said, you know God is real, he'd say, no, I don't. But after I've convicted them in several areas, after I've got them to walk in circles and shown them where their own mistakes lie in their logic, after those points, and I'm like, I've proven God to you in 3 different ways. You know he's real. At that point, they don't lie to me. At that point, I've not had a single person say, now hold up, no, I don't believe in God. At that point, they're like, no, I do know. I do know, but I refuse anyways.
You've not had a discussion with some of the people that I am, or you're a very convincing person when it comes to arguing.
I'm sure as I expand my conversations, I'll have that not be so true. There'll be somebody who catches the mistake, especially if I publish it here. They'll be like, oh, wait a minute, I need to make sure I don't admit that or something out of pride. And I'm sure that I won't be persuasive to everybody.
I understand that. And did you say you have? So you have run across people that have said that, but you don't know because you've had conversations with them, whether they genuinely do not know. Based on the fact that you've had a conversation with them, it comes out. But if you've not had if they say, I don't know that there is a God because I just don't know. And you didn't have conversations with them, is there a way that you have of determining that other than having a conversation with them?
Well, I'd first go to the Bible. The Bible says that everybody has it hidden in their heart. So I would say, well, I believe the Bible to be the true, full word of God. So that is what it is. And it says that they know, that they have in their heart an understanding. It may be small and it may be suppressed. And they may have tucked it away for so long that it doesn't speak loud anymore. But now, I mean, from there, you can just see how they talk about God. And normally, the more passionate they are, the more you realize that they're fighting something that they know to be true.
I understand, but this is still in a conversation. Now, you have said that the Bible says that that the knowledge of God is hidden in a person's heart. If something is hidden, is it not possible that they themselves do not know that? Maybe they know that there is a something somewhere, because I do know that scripture you're talking about, but they don't have a clue as to what that is.
No, it says in the Bible, they are without excuse. So they have no excuse.
Well, so here's the thing. It's mainly that if they searched themselves, they would realize it to be true. They can refuse to search to themselves. As I said, I lied to myself so much so that I convinced myself something that wasn't true. I've done this all the time in certain areas. For example, if I'm feeling a lot of pain and I don't want to feel pain, I'll say there is no damage. There is no reason for me to protect XYZ, and the pain will subside to a degree. It's a psychological trick where you lie to yourself and you believe your lie. And so lying to yourself is a very powerful tool, and you have to be very cautious of this, especially when trying to figure out the truth, that you don't get your own personal agendas involved. And a lot of these people, they lie to themselves, and then they bury what they have no excuse to bury.
Well, some of them.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No, to some of them, it's not about lying to themselves. It's about lying to others. It's for the audience.
Well, not only that, but it's been proven that if you argue with somebody, that you are more likely to discourage them from being convinced about your opinion. It's way more likely to reason with somebody and get them to switch sides. But if you debate with somebody and you just argue with them, then they actually have a call to protect their own idea, and they will be pushed further away. And so I think, yeah, like once you start getting in a debate, you can sometimes lie to yourself and lie to others just to protect your beliefs, because that's our instincts, is protect yourself.
Yeah. Can I give you an example of how I used to about the ability to lie to ourselves to the point that we believe it?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, and then I want to get back to faithful.
Okay. When I was in when I was a young person, and I would be going to church and doing youth activities and stuff. There was a period where I told myself that I was going to start feeling sick. I was going to start feeling like I had to throw up. And you know what would happen? I would start feeling sick. And this went on for a while. Every time we'd get to church, I'd say, oh, I'm going to start getting sick. And it would happen. It was the power of suggestion. It's your mind has a lot more power over your body than a lot of people think it does. I can't remember how long this went on.
A man is as he thinks.
Yeah. And it's just so weird that I was able to just make myself sick by expecting it to happen. So I'm done now.
The other part to my question, because you covered that one, I think, quite thoroughly, is that I asked you, and have you ever run across anybody that has never heard of Jesus? Now, you may have already answered that, and that's been 5 minutes ago or something, and I don't quite recall what your answer
I
was.
pretty much said no, I have not, and I think my reasoning for it's because I believe I live in America. You know, everybody has heard of Jesus in America, pretty much.
I live in America, and I have run across some individuals that genuinely did not know. I also know of at least one person that genuinely did not know that God existed. They were not putting on. They were not. They just were not. And I can tell you that experientially and factually. If you're going to ask me where and when, no, they were born and raised here in the United States.
Whereabouts?
And I'm not going to say it's impossible.
I'm
not going to say it's impossible for someone to not know who Jesus is, because, like, you know, if the information never gets to you, it never gets to you. And in American culture, oftentimes, I mean, we don't talk about Jesus a lot on the street. Like, I know I do, and I'm a weirdo for that. But like most people I talk to, they don't really bring up Jesus.
You do a lot of street ministry, and for that I commend you.
Well, there's a difference.
It's not that I'm condemning you for the people that don't. I mean, I commend you because there are a lot of young people, especially your age, that don't do that. I know a lot of young men that are in their middle 20s and early 30s that do go out and actually do street preaching on street corners in what is known as the gay corner.
Our dear friend Samuel Spoonhour does street not really so much preaching as he does street witnessing to people and sharing the gospel with people.
But there's a difference between not knowing Jesus and not knowing God.
Well, that's why I asked them separately. If you noticed, I asked the one and then I added to it because that is different. I did want to ask you one other question, then I'm going to mute my mic and let you all continue because these were questions that I had. The other question is that you said that you wanted to prove, this to be a science and the Bible, and that you were going to prove the Bible by science. I don't quite understand why we need to prove the Bible by science. That's something I've never really totally understood. With younger people, the Bible is truth. I don't understand why it needs to be proven to people based on man's by man's information. Now the Bible,
Because that's what
the
they're learning
Bible.
in college. You're talking
Well,
about the younger generation and
well,
whatnot. They're going to
Well,
college learning
give
wackadoodle
Faithful a
stuff.
chance to finish her question.
I understand that. Now, I do know that the Bible does verify a lot of the facts in the Bible. And as they learn more and more about science, they are learning that the Bible is true. And so, my, I'm just going to say, those of us in my decades and generations, and those of us that are seniors, look at things definitely from a different perspective. And I really appreciate this younger generation that's coming up because you're so inquisitive. You do want to know for sure and so forth. However, we've learned because science science has evolved in my time and it has found that the Bible is true. And to hear somebody say that I want to prove the Bible is true based on science, we've always looked at it the other way around, that 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 science has proven the Bible is real, is true, versus we're going to prove by science that the Bible's true. So maybe
But
you're saying
it
the
gets
same
shut
thing.
out.
What
It
I'm
get
saying is maybe may hold on, Dustin. This is addressed Jeremiah. Maybe maybe what y'all are saying is the same thing in different terms. We look at it, the science has proven that the Bible's true, and now y'all are looking at it from the viewpoint of science is going to prove the Bible true, and we look at it that science, is finding out that the Bible's true, and you're wanting to use science to prove it's true, and it's actually the other way around from our generation. So
I think
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just wondering if we're saying the same, basically the same thing.
I would probably say we're saying the same thing. It's like apples and oranges. I think science is slowly catching up with the Bible, but the point
Right.
is you can test if the Bible is accurate by looking at truth around you and saying, does the Bible consist of absolute truth? If it does, then that's one thing. I'm gonna let I can't see his name, the airplane guy, speak real quick.
Oh,
And then I'll elaborate.
That's Skylar. He's pretty cool. I know Skylar.
Okay.
Faithful disappeared. What in the world? We do know each other too. That's why I said she won't give women rides to Walmart. She would, but anyways, no, it gets shunned out. She was talking about the younger crowd too. So the question to address to you, in on your defense, I guess, she's talking about the younger crowd. The younger crowd's going to college, and colleges, teaching that chickens today evolved from Tyrannosaurus rexes. Okay, so for real, like as fact. And everything, and it is true that science and scientists are actually proving the Bible legitimately, freaking for real, but it gets shunned out. It gets taken out of the editorials and whatnot. It gets shunned by the scientific community. So it's not really fair. That's, I guess, my reply to, or, I guess on your side or whatever, to Faithful. It really does get shunned out. Like, I'm not a Hovendite, right? But Hoven brings this up all the time too. I'm not like I'm not like against Hoven either. I'm against some things Hoven does, not involved with creation, creation debates and stuff. So, well, anyways, he mentions it all the time, and it's for real. It's happening all over the place. I mean, the college crowd, that generation right there, from 18 to 25, all right, 18 to 25-year-olds are getting amped up and hyped up here in America. I'm talking about here in America because that's what you said. You're here in America, and I'd like to bring up Claude's comment too. I absolutely agree with Claude's comment, that so many people don't know Jesus and everything. But with your reply, I mean, to that comment, you're here in America, they have television and everything. So I'm not speaking about, Amish as they didn't hear about Jesus. I'm speaking about, like Amish people, don't have technology, don't use technology and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's got to be somebody here in America if they haven't heard of Jesus or God, or creation, etc. Then with all the television publications, newspapers, everything, for generations. So I mean, you're talking here in America, it's I mean, it was even in schools until the 1920s. So I mean, God and Jesus was actually in freaking public schools, until the 1920s.
Yeah.
So
Skybro, if I may,
Was it the monkey trial in which they
What?
lost that? Which trial? Which trial was it? Was it the monkey trial? I believe.
I don't remember.
if I may, I
Yeah.
thought strange question that Faithful asked when she said, "Why do you need to try and prove the Bible with science?" Well, it's
Well-
because people demand that you do it. People say, "Well, it's just a book. As far as I'm concerned, it's just some old book that a bunch of men wrote. Prove it to me scientifically." People ask that you do that. That's
Well, so
I don't
my-
understand what you would. Anyway, go ahead, Jeremiah. Sorry.
Yeah, my thing is, I know the Bible's true. Okay, when I got saved as a 6-year-old, I didn't have the ability to comprehend what I'm trying to do now. And I remember my salvation prayer, if you will, went along the lines of, "Lord, I understand that I'm not going to know everything. I'm not going to be able to answer every question. I'm not going to be able to understand the secrets of the cosmos. But I know enough. I know enough to know that God's word is true, and I can learn from there." And so at that point, my eyes were opened, and I can now do more research. My thing is, as Ryan said, and as Skylar, you said too, is I want to take it from a completely objective, non-personal point, and just say, okay, as a person who has no understanding of God, can you find God? Not using the Bible, not using any other outside source. Can you find God from no God?
Oh,
And
don't
it
get
turns
me
out you
started on
can.
that.
You can look at this pen right here and find out God exists. The entire creation points to God. Coincidentally, the Bible says that. Now my question is, because I made a video on that, I made a very detailed video on that. My point is, I want to go from pretty much making a video project like that, not necessarily only for myself, but just so other people have that information out there. So we can go from, okay, now you know there's a God, but how do you go from God to knowing who is God? Because if you want to mature spiritually, if you want to solve your problems on earth, if you want to do anything right, you have to figure out who he is and what he wants. And it's a scary thing to know there's a God and not know who he is and what he wants. Even if God is a jerk dictator, you should know who he is and what he wants.
But how are you able to get from like the pencil to Jesus? Because this is a trouble a bunch of Christians have. So
Well,
they can.
that's kind of where I'm stumped, to be honest.
I
think I found the solution, but I'm not sure yet.
I mean, you can get to the name, but to me it wasn't Jesus. So, like for example, I would like an atheist. Here's a family is atheist question: Is it either? Is it that the Christian God exists or no God exists?
Well, at the moment, in my study, at the moment in the study, I've concluded without a shadow of a doubt that you can prove God exists. And I can show you like a 10-minute video and boom, you should know that God exists based off of that 10-minute video. Like you can't really refute it. Okay.
Yeah,
it's super simple. You look at a design, you see a designer, boom, done.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to finding out that it's the God of the Bible, whatever you want to call him, God the Father, the Holy Spirit, the Son, and any of that, the God of the Bible. How do you point to that over Buddha or Muhammad or, any of the Hindu gods? And that's the thing is, that's what I'm trying to embark on is how do you go from not looking at the Bible to looking at the Bible? There's a God, the science behind there's a God. How do you, using historical science, that's one that a lot of people didn't think about, historical science, maybe some science, I'm not sure yet, and common sense and logic, infer without a shadow of a doubt that Jesus Christ in the Bible is the God that we're talking about.
So, I mean, an atheist would simply just ask you, is it that the Christian God exists or no God exists? And so they'll be able to debunk the Christian God using Bible text. And then you're going to have to submit that, well, no God exists.
Well, in my opinion, and this is just how I answer the question, it is kind of Jesus is God, like God exists as Jesus, or there is no God. Now you'll mention that they'll debunk the biblical text. I have searched for years. I'm only 20, so like I haven't had too many years to search, but I've searched for years and I've not found anything that contradicts the Bible. If I found
Well,
something that truthfully contradicts the Bible, I mean, and you probably heard many other people say this, I would throw it out. I would do a lot of research. I would study it because I would want to be sure, and then I would throw it out if it was truthfully in error or in wrong. But I've not seen anything that proves the Bible wrong.
it depends which person you're talking to, because like each person has like their own denomination. So just because they defeat this one person doesn't mean they defeat the entirety.
Yeah, and again, like, let's say Kent Hovind, right? Because I was a protege of Kent Hovind. That's what Proverbs guy says. If Kent Hovind was beaten in a debate, that has nothing to do with my salvation. That has to do with Kent Hovind. Now, I might look at that and be like, no, wait a minute. Kent Hovind was beaten in a debate. I haven't heard of a single debate he's been beaten in. But it doesn't say that, Kent Hovind is the Bible. It's not that Kent Hovind being proven wrong is the Bible being proven wrong.
But I think if you're gonna say like, if it's either just a Christian God or no God exists, and then you happen to get defeated, or you just going to capitulate and say, well, there is no God, or could you just move on? Well, it might not be the Christian God; it could be a different God.
Well, yeah. So as I said with my first video, we've proven God exists. The thing is, how do you find him? So yes, to answer that question, if I were to be convinced that Jesus of the Bible was not God, I would definitely still look for God. It wouldn't be that there was no God because there's not the Jesus of the Bible. It would be, well, scientifically speaking, without the Bible, we've come to the conclusion that this pen had a creator. We've come to the conclusion that a rock must have had a creator. Who is that creator? Is it an alien force out there? Is it some weird intellect, like universe? Where is it? We know there's a God using science. Where?
That's cool, because like if you talk to some Christians, they will take nobody but Jesus. So like they expect Jesus to love everybody, even if you're a killer. But if God isn't Jesus to them, they will not love this God. So in a weird way, these Christians who will not take anybody but Jesus, by default, they hate God. They are no different in their heart from atheists.
Yeah, they end up, and that's actually interesting. I haven't thought about it. They end up hating the idea of God. My thing is, if for some reason, and yes, I've been formed by the way I've been raised and the way, I was a Christian since 6. So yes, my research so far has pointed to Jesus being God. But if Jesus wasn't God, I wouldn't just say there's no God. I would say, well, scientifically there's a God. Let me figure out if he even cares about me.
Well, let's say he even if he didn't care, would you still,
it'd still be out there?
Yeah.
Even if he just created the world as some pond scum and launched it out into the universe, there's still a creator. Even if I like him or not, even if he's, let's say like the devil was God, and the whole theory where, the switch roles, Jesus was really gaslighting the devil, and devil's, the creator of the universe. Let's just say the devil was God and the devil was a jerk who wanted to destroy us all, right? If that's God, then that would be God. And it doesn't matter if God is a jerk or not, he would be God. He would be the ruler of the universe. Now, obviously, the devil wasn't God, as far as I'm aware. And so, just to clear that up.
Yeah, he wouldn't be. Because, logically, you're not going to destroy your own creation. It makes no sense.
I have. You would not want me as God.
Well, unless
you're going to... things in video games and then blown them up just to blow them up. And, I've built war simulators just to watch war and be entertained. So, you wouldn't want me as God.
Oh, I used to build cities in Sim City and then just start having tornadoes and hurricanes and
there's
earthquakes.
There's a video game called God, something like God Simulator, where you get to have little people and they worship you and they build altars and you can expand their nation, kind of like a SimCity thing, and you can also deliver the wrath of God upon them and destroy them utterly. And I've done it too many times.
It is kind of fun. I mean, you just be sure.
You build it up, you tear it down. You build it up, you tear it down. Some people are that way. And so I could imagine a God who's wanting to be entertained, who is bored and says, your turmoil entertains me. I could see a God being that way. Now, obviously, it's not the God of the Bible, but I could see if it wasn't the God of the Bible, I could see a God who would be like that. And so, again, if you believe in a God, but you don't know who he is, that's frightening. That's the true frightening thing. And that's when I figured out as a 6-year-old, God exists, but I don't know who he is. I better figure out who he is and what he wants.
Exactly.
Because if he is the God of the
Crikey,
Bible,
mate, there is no God, all right? There is a geological column.
oh,
The
They
shut
Lord
up.
both start with
exists.
G. They both start with G, but you do not worship one of them, for crikey's sake.
How come you're an atheist to the other gods except one?
You guys should stay in character the rest of the night.
God doesn't exist. I don't see him.
Hey, Jeremiah, address this question from Claude Bowles, if you would. If you would.
A pen is an animated object and is created. Living things reproduce without the need to be created. Have you seen the latest Tesla bot?
Wait,
Where
does
they
he think
literally-
rocks were alive? Because he's gonna have to ignore abiogenesis.
Yeah, well,
that's
let's
just
just start
rocks.
with this. Let's start with this. Have you seen Elon's new Tesla bot named Artemis? It literally builds another one of itself. The robot creates another robot.
That just adds complication.
That's not true. That's not the robot does not build another robot.
It didn't do the
The
full
robot
thing yet.
the
didn't do
robot
full thing yet.
assembled parts that were like pre-assembled from other processes.
You're
Like,
right, you're
okay,
right. You're right, but my point is, it grabbed the arm, it bolted the arm on, okay? It literally started assembling the version of itself. So my point is, simply saying one can reproduce to another doesn't take out that something had to be created in the first place. And if you take it down to the rock, right? A rock, as he said, that rock still had to come from somewhere. That material, that energy, those atoms had to come from somewhere. Simply because one's reproducing them to another doesn't mean that the first one wasn't built. Kind of like those bots, as I was mentioning, as an example, one had to be built by humans. The other one could be assembled by non-humans. You could, in
crikey,
theory,
mate. Crikey, mate. Haven't you
could, in
paid
theory-
attention?
Hey, I'm trying to say something. You could, in theory, 30 years down the road, take these robots, start the mining factories, start the metal, designing place, and build the robots, all using robots. It doesn't object to the idea that the first one was created. From there, it's a system that keeps going, but in the beginning, they had to be created. Where did the first human come from? Where did the first living organism come from?
We literally have
Crikey.
machines for like cell assembly in our bodies. So it's like there's carrier
You
machines.
said goodnight several messages ago. Now you're still blasting me.
Haven't you paid attention in your chemistry class, mate?
It's just chemicals.
Chemistry. It's all acid, mate. That's all it is. You might as well go get you a liter of it and drink it for all the sense you're making tonight, mate.
Oh, I like it.
Jeremiah,
I like when like atheists like to
Claude Bowles.
Okay, how did the plant survive without the sun for one day?
They can't.
Because
That's the trivia.
God-
That's the trivial problem, is one day. I can leave a plant in a closet for a day. Especially if it was made from God and it's 100% perfectness, like it's not even sick or anything, it's 100% perfect. Can it survive 24 hours without sunlight?
Wait, I
I
think he
would
might be.
think so.
I think he might be referring to the firmament. So how long was the firmament up there?
The firmament has been up since day 2.
So
So plants made on day 3.
Jeremiah.
because according to
God made the firmament, then God made the plants.
because I heard from Cohnhoven because he does believe in like this flat earther, ice dome thing.
Kent does not believe in a flat Earth theory.
He believes in the dome from the flat.
No,
Earth.
he doesn't. He
not a
does
dome.
not believe
It's not
in
a
flat
dome.
Earth or a
It's-
dome.
No,
He
believes
He
in
says
the
it was the
Okay,
firmament.
Hold up.
Yeah.
Okay, as a protege of Cohnhoven, I can answer this. He believes in a layer about 2 to 3 inches thick of ice encompassing the globe. keeping air pressure in, keeping the bad things of space out. It's not a dome, it's a sphere. It's a bubble around the Earth.
How does
To
that
be clear.
stay up? And how do you get the sun?
One, electromagnetism of very cold ice floats. And two, if it's solid all the way around, it would technically hold itself up, kind of like an igloo.
Okay.
Because, and then the possibility of it spinning and staying in orbit, that also, like, how does the space station stay up?
Yeah, but you still have the sun problem.
Well, so the sun was created on day 4. The plants were created on day 3. His thing was saying that the sun didn't exist, but plants did. How did plants survive with no sunlight? And my point
I'd
is,
like to interject on
for
that.
24 hours.
Well, no, the firmament didn't go down until the flood.
Okay.
God was the light. God was the light before the sun.
There is also that.
They
I was
didn't-
about to bring that up. There's also the light before the sun. So it wasn't even darkness.
Oh, so no.
God brought forth the light. God brought forth the light. Where did he bring it from? He brought it from himself.
I would agree. So as I said, like, one, you had light, you still had day and night. Two, as far as the sun's concerned, even if you didn't have light, it'd only be 24 hours.
Well, look, I'm gonna be totally okay with this explanation, but an atheist, he's gonna call that wacky. Me as a theist, like, well, I don't really care. Maybe the order was different.
Well,
So
I'll admit, having plants before the sun, and especially having light before the sun, these things, it does take a leap of faith. We weren't there, okay? But my thing is, in the beginning, I believe in God. In the beginning, you believe in dirt. Not you, but an atheist.
Every
so it's
single
kind of like it comes down to faith.
Every single like native story of gods, they've all been associated with light. They have shining, gleaming bodies, right? There's always a light that's associated.
Yeah, them being like the sun for a while, like raw.
Right? Like Jesus was called the Son. I mean, there's a connection there.
And I think
Because nobody thinks the sun is literally God.
Yeah. What I think it is Jesus not Jesus, but God wanted to be the light before the sun was. Because, all these people who worship the sun, we had a God before the sun. It says, in the beginning, God. The end of the story. Okay? Like, God was first, and then the sun came on day 4. He didn't need the sun. He made the sun because he wanted to, but he didn't need the sun. And I feel like that may be, as far as scripturally goes, that may have been his motive for such an event. Now, yeah, if you look at it from an atheistic view, it doesn't make sense.
He made a stand-in because he knew that he would have to walk away from his creation. So he made a sun.
So
Maybe.
So it was like a prep before he left.
Somebody had to feed the plants.
God likes to use consistency. God likes to definitely have a system that can kind of run by itself, in a way. It's kind of like building a bicycle and then walking with it on your back everywhere you go. No, you build a bicycle and then you hop on the bicycle. God, for some reason, likes to have a very consistent, well-oiled machine and likes to have everything in the machine have sense and reason. Things don't just appear in and out of our universe all the time. We get heat from the sun. Science works. Science is like reliable and consistent. God likes the consistency for some reason.
Well,
Actually, I have to disagree with you on that last part. There are things that are popping in and out of this dimension or universe, whichever one you want to call it, all the time. They're just at a real small subatomic level.
I've heard stuff about that, but the thing is that not science, or is that science we've not explored yet? Everything we have explored makes sense. Everything we haven't explored doesn't make sense to us. So I would still say, as far as the knowable universe that we have seen and understood and that we can explain, it makes sense. Like, it's all a well-oiled machine. To say that there couldn't be a 4th or 5th dimension that things pop in and out of and have it still make perfect scientific sense, I mean, it's possible. I don't know everything. I don't know a tenth of everything. I don't know like anything at all, pretty much, compared to the vast amount of knowledge.
But Jeremiah, don't you know science is defined as natural explanations? God is not natural. It can't be
Yeah, there is
science.
there is
Crikey,
a
Mike,
system.
have you never heard of the multiverse theory? I mean, there's mathematical explanations that explain the balance of the universe and completely account for all these variables you keep throwing out here that you bring up your god of the gaps.
The Marvel universe is real science, Jeremiah.
And there is a
So
fifth dimension.
I gotta
They
ask
had
though.
a
I gotta
complete
ask. So
song.
in the
Wakanda
multiverse,
forever! Wakanda forever!
guys, let's pull it in. In the multiverse theory, is it possible that in one of those infinite universes there's a god?
Well, God isn't inside the universe, so he would be outside all these universes. So that's
Theoretically, I mean, if you're talking from an atheist understanding, and there's an infinite amount of universes and an infinite amount of possibilities, could there be a god in one of them?
well, for God to be inside one of the universe would not make him God, because God is defined
As
as
we know him, I would agree. And God of our, like God who controls our universe, he's not in the universe. I would agree with that, and
Yeah,
I would say
because-
we're on the same page.
Yeah,
But I'm just saying, from a evolutionary idea, from a atheistic view, someone who thinks that God has to be trapped in the universe that he creates, then could you just be like, well, in all of these infinite possibilities, could there be a God in one of those infinite possibilities? I mean, it's infinite. And then how do you know it's not this one?
I would say no, because it wouldn't be defined as a God. You can't evolve with God because it wouldn't be natural.
Define God. I think that's something we get caught up on, is define God.
Because
Now, I would agree, like God being a supernatural being, God we know of, definitely. But like, you ever heard of the Greek gods? They call them gods, but like, they were born.
well, God, you can be born in the supernatural. So they're not talking about natural birth. So like,
Whoa, wait, what? Did you just say that you can be born in the new? I know that you can be reborn in the supernatural, but I've never heard
The
of
Greek gods. No.
being
The Greek
born
gods
there.
and theories. And
yeah. So
I'm talking about the Greek gods. The gods that don't exist, that are fairy tales. They call them gods by definition, but they were born. Like
Well, yeah.
One of the Hindu gods was born out of like the navel of another god, and like
For exa-
something like Odin, Odin had
Because-
his son who was Thor.
because it's talking about order. For example, you can't have, let's say, the god of the god of wine before the god of death, because it's out of order. So
That makes no sense. That makes no sense. You absolutely could have the god of wine before you have the god of death. Grapes
No.
are not alive in that concept. They don't have a soul.
no,
So grapes can absolutely be.
grapes are alive. They have life, right? They come from a
No,
plant.
but death, in order for death to work, like the concept you're bringing up is like you have to have a soul in order to be sorted out in the afterlife. The death that you're relating to these grapes it's not the same. There's a clear distinction.
Sure, but
Well,
still, it's
Plants
My
are
point
alive,
is-
but they don't have what the Bible calls the breath of life.
yeah. They don't have soul. I'm not saying.
Okay,
plants
so my
have soul.
point is, guys, defining God, because here's the thing, like let's say we removed the name God, because I know like a lot of atheists object to the idea of God. Do you know what you could call God? And just hold on with me for a second. You could refer to God as an alien. If you look at the atheistic view, you're looking at a being who is infinitely more powerful and intelligent than us, that is outside of this universe, not to mention planet. So God, in a technical sense, is an alien. Now the thing is, they don't have any problem accepting that there could be an alien out there that creates the universe. But they would, as Richard Dawkins said, that alien himself would have to evolve, and that's not true. But my point is, when understanding who God is, you have to understand, we like to kind of separate him into this little box, when really, remember who God is. God is not human. God is an extraterrestrial, as you could say, someone from outside of this universe even, who influences us, who created all of this. So when you're looking at the definition of God, it becomes this very tricky subject.
Well, that's the thing. They will never say it's God because, by definition, to them, God is supernatural. And if this God you're talking about is a product of natural evolution, it would still be considered natural.
Yeah. And so, well, as they said, like, he would first have to evolve.
Yeah,
But
by
I think
natural
Richard
means.
Dawkins has been quoted, and there's a great movie you guys could watch called Expelled, where this guy interviews Richard Dawkins. And Richard Dawkins says, oh, yeah, it looks like there's a creator everywhere. You can even see his signature in the world. But that creator would first have to evolve.
Oh, yeah,
And that's where you get to the people who know there's a God, know there's a creator, and then says he's an alien. He can't be a supernatural being. He has to first be created himself.
Yeah, because they're defining science as the natural and only the natural, which is opposing to the original definition of science, which just means to know or gnosis.
Yeah, if Richard Dawkins. said
Anyway,
that,
that's all the time I got for today. I'm gonna be
All
heading
right.
out. I don't know if I leave if the show shuts down. I think Ryan's running it, or
yeah,
there's Proverbs guy in the background. You guys can talk for as long as
he's
you want.
letting me run it.
I
He's
have a
letting
family,
me.
so.
Good talk.
He's letting me.
Come back sometime.
Listen, I want to
Nice
say,
show,
Jeremiah,
man.
It's Friday.
Stop denying science. God doesn't exist.
I just want to
Crikey,
say,
mate, it's all just acids and bases.
Jesus
And
was
you
alive.
have your
guys, let me. Well, I just wanted to tell him that as his debut night, I think he did a stellar job, and I'm looking forward to what he has planned in the future, and I'm proud of him. I really am. And I wanted to tell him that, but he got out of here quick. I'll tell him. Well, he doesn't like too much praise because he's afraid he'll get a big head. It's hard not.
Honest
It's
guy.
hard not to praise him, though. It's hard not to. He's so gifted. But anyway, thank you guys for joining. I'm about to go ahead and end it for the night. I think it's getting a little late for me. Thank you guys. I loved your character accents. That was very entertaining. You should
anytime,
do that
mate.
Y'all should do that more often. Thank you for your participation, and thank you for helping Jeremiah have a fantastic debut. God bless all you guys, and I hope you have a great evening. Bye-bye.